Hi, this is Mike with episode 59 of Getting Everyone Moving, brought to you by Palms of Pines Parasports. Today we have Tom Vandever. Hey, Tom.
Hi, how are you doing?
All right. Hey, let's get started. So, how did you get involved in the world of adaptive sports?
Well, it was a little indirect for me, I guess. I came to the University of Virginia back in '78 for a graduate degree. I had actually played basketball in college at a small college here.
Okay.
And while I was here, the city of Charlottesville started a therapeutic recreation program. And the first thing they did was start a basketball program for adults and asked for volunteers. So I went over and said, I don't know much about disabilities, but I know a bit about basketball. And so I was drafted immediately.
Okay. So, what were you attracted, to working, with people with various disabilities, or was it more, I know basketball and let's see what this is?
I think it was a little of both. I just hadn't had a lot of experience with disability issues at that point. And what happened was almost immediately we had so many people coming to that event that, and a number of them were using wheelchairs. So we sort of separated the groups, and I said, I'll go down with everybody in the wheelchair. And I stayed with the group in the wheelchairs. And we worked on stuff for a while. And finally they came to me and said, hey, we need to start a team. And that's where we got going with the Charlottesville Cardinals.
Okay, so talk about the evolution of the Charlottesville Cardinals. Is it only adults or is it youth as well? Do you have a feeder system? How does that work?
Well, at the beginning, since we didn't know what we were doing, um, we we I just ran down. It was all adults to start with, but very quickly we had a group of young teenagers, probably 13 to 16 years old and so we just incorporated everyone into the mix, and then we had a couple of women join the team, and so our team started with a mix of juniors, adult men and adult women, which was kind of unusual at the time for the teams in the early 80s. So, and there was a team already in Richmond, Virginia, and they came over and gave us some pointers, and then for a couple of years when we played them, they just massacred us.
Yeah, yeah.
But our folks learned very quickly, and I think it took us. We created a conference there in Virginia, and so our team managed to win the conference championship after about 3 years. So we were pretty proud of ourselves. And over the years, in my case, my cartilage dissolved, and I had arthritic issues and also some fusion of vertebrae. So eventually I became eligible to play as well.
So you play too. Okay. So are you
Now,
player coach now then, or?
yeah, I'm the alleged player coach, yes. Fortunately, we have some guys that we've sent a couple of folks to college over the years, and they're back with us now. So they're able to take a lot of the leadership roles now, which is fun to see.
Do you have a number of teams? And if so, which divisions are you playing in?
Yeah, our team has played over the years in Division 3, Division 2, and Division 1. Currently, we're at Division 2. At one time, we had also hosted a women's team, and currently we help coach another Division 3 team in a city near us called Harrisonburg. So there's the Harrisonburg Cardinals, who are Division III, and we're the Charlottesville Cardinals, Division II. Of course, this year, the real problem has been finding a gym and getting our players in the gym with all the pandemic problems.
Yeah. How many teams do you have in Virginia? You said you have a whole conference?
Yeah, it used to be more. Now there are only 3 teams in Virginia. 4 teams in Virginia. And we have the Division I team in Washington, DC. And so all of those teams are within 2.5 hours of us. And then we have the teams in North Carolina. There are quite a few teams there.
Yeah.
That we play.
Yeah. How many teams or how many players do you have in the Charlottesville area?
Well, we have about 14 players that play regularly with us within, I would say, within a 40-mile radius of the city. We also have a few that come farther than that. But
that's amazing. So you have a really good core of team members then.
Yeah, we do, and we work cooperatively with the Richmond group as well. We're within about 60 miles, so if they have an event, we go help them, and they help us as well. And it's not unusual for their players to show up at our practices and our guys at their practices. So
that's great. How many days a week? When you not during COVID, but how many days a week do you practice?
Pretty much just once a week now. We used to do twice a week. Okay. What happened some years ago, and it was a good thing, that the Title IX made gym space in the schools more scarce for us because the women's sports and the men's boys sports were all in the same schedule, and so our high schools it's really tough to get space there for practice times because all their teams are practicing too. But in the past, we were able to, and the same thing has happened in our recreation centers. There's just so many more programs that they're running now that it's tough to squeeze in gym time for our guys.
So I'm wondering, so I work for the Desert Recreation District here, and sometimes we have similar issues, just getting gym time.
Right.
And I just wonder, why do you think that is? Because obviously these are sports, it's focusing on people with disability, but still it's sports, and, why isn't there time available?
Yeah, I think there are just so many, I've just observed so many more activities, whether it's they've moved gymnastics in, even pickleball for senior kind of programming. There's just much more programming in general, and so much demand for gym space. In our case, there's limited gym space. When we started, we had an old armory here that the city controlled, and we used that gym. And it wasn't what I was able to do back in those days. I went to the Parks and Rec and I said, why don't you guys give me a key and we'll just go in after the place closes every evening? And they said, well, we can do that, but we have to pay you. And I said, okay. And they were supposed to pay me $1 a year. So that was our deal. They paid me $1 a year and I got the key, and I would be responsible for opening it. And then we really could practice quite a bit at that point. Of course, they never paid me the $1. So I think they owe me about $30 right
now. But it sounds like, so the city of Charlottesville is pretty progressive though, in terms of, wanting and then implementing programs for people with disability.
Yeah, I think so. The city is really good about that. And early on, they were the sponsor of the team.
Uh-huh.
Over time, our players, I want to say, became politicized, but not partisan in a way. They became very interested in disability rights issues. And so they helped form a center for independent living here in Charlottesville, which is called the Independence Resource Center. And so now the center and the city jointly sponsor our program, which is good as well. But it also works both ways. They're always advocating with the local governments, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But,
So that's really interesting to me that, you know, that a Center for Independent Living was formed. I mean, how important do you feel that advocacy is, you know, for people playing adaptive sports? I mean, it's
well, I think it's critical.
okay.
They're already, in our area, they're already recognized in the community. And, you know, we are always doing events at local schools, at the university, even halftime events for the big events. People know the players and recognize them. And so they're able to speak to the local officials and really get their attention very quickly, I think. And for whatever reason, there's a, a support just from people who are interested in sports who might otherwise not be interested in the argument about disability rights. So we try to use that both ways to our advantage. And
No,
but
yeah, go
it
ahead.
never ends. There's
Yeah.
always something.
No, well, that's right. It does never end. In terms of your own life journey, though, you said, okay, you know, you played stand-up basketball, of course, and over time, you know, you've had some challenges with your body. I mean, talk about how you've kind of, you know, made that transition to playing adaptive sports.
Yeah, well, you know, for me, it wasn't an abrupt thing because coaching our team, we always needed another body in a chair
Yeah.
for practices or something. And so I wasn't unfamiliar with the sport
Yeah.
or some of the skills. Um, it was, for me, you know, I went through a long period of time of just going every 12 weeks, getting my knees drained and shot up, you know, because they wouldn't give me knee replacements. I was so young.
Yeah.
I had to wait for quite a while till they improved them enough to last any length of time. But we also used to go, somehow in the early 80s, we heard about a tournament in Toronto, and it was called the Spitfire Challenge. And it was always in the spring and at that time. And so, and Canada allowed able-bodied players to play. So we took our team the first year and they said to me, hey, you know, you can jump in a chair and play too. And so I was able to play in Canada, and we really, I think that kind of opened our own eyes to the advantages that are associated with that. And, you know, unfortunately in Virginia, we would come back and some of the teams in the smaller areas might only have 5 or 6 players.
Hmm.
And over time, unfortunately, you know, a couple of those players wouldn't be able to play. They would retire. And the team would be left with 2 or with 3 players. And, you know, you would say, well, I know you have a brother or a friend or somebody who would love to play with you guys so you can have a team. But you know, at that time, our rules wouldn't allow that. So instead, we just lost those teams, and those players didn't have any ability to play. And I always thought that was really unfortunate. That I thought there should have been a way we could have incorporated that, but it still is a controversy, you know.
What is, and I'm going to ask you about that. So what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously if able-bodied play, they would be a 4.5, right?
Yes, yes.
And maybe you could limit the number of able-bodied participants. Well, you'd have to, on the court at any one time. What are your thoughts about including able-bodied in, playing in the US?
Well, in my case, I'm legal.
Yeah.
But in a chair, I'm not any different than somebody we would say is able-bodied. And honestly, there are class ones, class twos, and class threes that run rings around me. But I think it's possible that it could be structured. Well, in my view, I would say don't even structure it. Just if we're going to have a functional classification system, then that's what it is. If in my case I'm a 4.5 and I can do all the movements, down one way, down the other, etc. And that's why I'm a 4.5. So I don't really see a problem. I know people are worried it'll squeeze people out of the sport, but I'm not seeing that really happen. What I'm seeing is we tend to lose more opportunities where smaller communities could be involved. Unless there's a player who's a very high by a star there. And if there is that star and they have support, they can travel 100 miles or 200 miles to a team to play. But so many people can't do that. And I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, transportation is a huge issue. So, why not make the sport more accessible by having teams throughout? But yeah, you're right. It's a big issue.
Yeah. Well, I don't have an answer, but I have an opinion.
Yeah. What about, do you see in your area in Virginia, there's no, as far as I know, there's no collegiate adaptive sports, are there?
There are not, although recently we were able to help James Madison University acquire 10 sports chairs. They wanted to start an intramural program. So we did that. And just recently, we've been contacted by West Virginia University who wants to do the same thing. So we're going to help them get some chairs. So we're hoping that those seeds will grow. I recently heard that Clemson wants to start a team. So that's exciting.
And yeah, hopefully in North Carolina at UNC, they'll be starting something up. But that's really good to hear about Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia. I know there are a few professors at James Madison University, I think, who are pushing, and I think you need to have that champion in order to make it happen.
Yes. Well, in this case, someone who went through the JMU program is now at West Virginia. So those seeds are getting scattered around as well.
That's so terrific to hear. How do you think, what would be your opinion on creating a more inclusive society? In your area, for example, what are some of the things that need to happen? Are there barriers that exist? More education?
Well, yeah, when I came to Charlottesville as a graduate student, I sold my car and brought a bicycle. And the first thing I learned about Charlottesville was no matter which way you go, it's uphill. And so we have we have some terrain issues here for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have a very active advocacy program. And fortunately, we have the ADA in place, which gives a little more teeth than we used to have.
Yeah.
We used to have we would sponsor the yearly Dirty Dozen of the worst obstacles for people with disabilities in the community and publicize that. So we haven't had to do that lately, but
I think that's great. The worst dirty dozen. Oh, so like, what are some of the things that were on that list?
well, the one that I remember the most was the city would, when it snowed, had a they would clear the parking lots and pile all the snow in the handicap parking spaces,
Oh my God. Oh
which
my,
was, they stopped doing that pretty fast. But
yeah. Oh my gosh.
you know, most of these things, they're not evil. They're just thoughtless. You know, people don't think about what they're doing. And
Yeah.
usually you can point it out and fix it, in my experience. Occasionally you can't, and then you have to go another route. But
I've seen this great cartoon a few times where, it snowed and there's a work person in front of a school on the steps, a ramp that's, totally covered with snow, and there's the steps, the person with a wheelchair waiting. And, the guy says, well, you have to wait until I do the steps. And she goes, well, if you shovel the ramp, then everyone could go up, right? It's like,
right.
okay, right. So we're coming to the end of our interview. Are there some final words that you'd like to leave our listening audience? Just anything on your mind that you'd like to say to people?
Well, to me, adaptive sports are really a treasure. We always tell people or observe that when we have an event and people come and watch the game, really for the first 4 or 5 minutes, all they see are the wheelchairs,
Yeah.
And then at some magical point, the wheelchairs seem to disappear. And then they see the athletes and they see the game. And at the end of the event, they recognize our athletes as athletes. And truly, some of them are world-class athletes. And I think that's really the magic of the sport. And so as far as an advocacy weapon or tool, I should say.
Are you going to watch the Paralympics this summer?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we watch that. And we really, of course, we know most of the basketball players these days and cheer for them. Even the Canadian and the US guys we know quite well. And so we'll be cheering for everybody.
That's great.
Not just basketball, but
yeah, everything. Well, Tom, thank you very much.
Everything.
Really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this, and best wishes to you too.
Thank you.